Alright, so this is going to be my MistKing starter misting system kit unboxing and setup video. Let's see how it goes. Alright, so in the box came obviously the reference manuals, some free swag. This corner mounting kit's for actually mounting the nozzle. And I bought it separate, it wasn't included in the starting kit. But the rest of the stuff was included in the starting kit. All the hosing, the MistKing timer with the instructions, all the hardware required for the valve. MistKing motor, it's actually a pretty beefy motor. It's got a little bit of weight to it, probably a pound or two. And then the AC adapter and stuff to go with the motor. Let's see how I hook it up now. So the first task I'm going to try and tackle is setting up the reservoir bucket. The bucket I had to buy separate from the hardware store. They don't send the buckets. That way you can customize your setup as required, is what it says in the instruction book here. But it starts off saying that you have to drill a hole in the bottom of the bucket with a 9/16 bit to get the first little valve in there. It says to drill it about an inch from the bottom of the bucket. So we'll give it a go and see what happens. Looks pretty straightforward. Alright, step one, the hole has been drilled. Yeah, I guess I forgot to mention I also spent the extra $2 for the food grade plastic. Figured if I'm gonna invest in a high quality misting system, I might as well make it a food grade plastic bucket for the chameleon as well. Well, see how the valve inserts now. So I'm trying to work the bulkhead in, which is what I guess this piece is called according to the book. There's a little rubber O-ring that you slip onto it, then push it up tight against the plastic there. The 9/16 hole, it says it is pretty tight, and yeah, it is in fact pretty tight. It's going to take a little bit of work. I'm going to have to kind of screw it in there and try not to wreck the threads on it. Yeah, and then just the next piece here screws on the inside to hold the gasket here tight up against the plastic. And here's the final assembly of the piece on the inside. Just screws on. It is pretty snug fit. And I'll just get a wrench just to screw it on there. Reasonable, just hand tight. Don't overdo it too much. You might actually strip the plastic threads, which I'm assuming is going to be a bad thing to do. So I'll just tighten that up and then move on to the next step. Alright, so I cranked that piece on there, and yeah, it definitely doesn't take too much force, and it'll jump the threads pretty easily if you try to over crank it a little bit. Hopefully that's enough. I guess I'll test run it before I put this bucket on my floor. Probably would have preferred that piece to actually be metal or something so it wouldn't jump the threads a little bit or as easily, but I guess it must work alright, so we'll find out. Right, the next part I'm going to try and do is connect the screen top wedge to my ReptiBreeze cage here. The instructions in the book are actually a little vague, I think, for how to properly do it. Basically, it references you to take a look at this picture here to get an idea of how they did it. It looks like it mounts from the inside up and then somehow like screws into the frame. These little screws come with the packaging, so yeah, I'm guessing they tap directly into the aluminum somehow. So we'll take a look and see how it goes. Hopefully I don't wreck my cage. So after a little bit of a closer look of how this is going to work, it looks like it shouldn't be too big of a deal. I'm going to try and mount it up in the front corner. And then the screws are like a metal, like self-tapping screws. So it shouldn't be too big of a deal, I think, just to kind of screw it in there. I can't imagine it'd be too much force to try and push the screw in there to get it started. I'm going to try and mount mine in the front of the cage. It's like a corner mount, so it kind of like points obviously in a direction. I know I have a couple of hanging plants in my cage, so I figure if I mount the nozzle in the front, then at least maybe my hanging plants in the back of the cage will get a little bit of water as well. And my hibiscus plant in the bottom. Yeah, I have like a hibiscus, a wax plant up in the top left, and then just a pothos in the back right hand corner there. Let's see how it goes. Hopefully the plumbing isn't too difficult. Well, so far so good. Going relatively easy, I guess. The hardest part was getting the first screw started without trying to break everything. Looks like I actually had to back out the one screw on the side just to get my screwdriver, so I had enough room to get that one in there, or the side ones in there. There's not quite enough room. I didn't want to damage the screen by pushing into it too much. I didn't want to put the screw in kind of sideways either, so that it wouldn't sit nice and flush with the plastic there. Yeah, but once you get the first screw started, it took me, I don't know, a few minutes, but then the second one went in relatively easily once it was stabilized and up against the plastic. But yeah, looks like it shouldn't work too bad. So after further review, it turned out it's actually more difficult than anticipated to try to get those screws in there. I don't think they're actual like proper like self-tapping screws. So yeah, I'm just gonna cheat and drill a little tiny pilot hole instead in each location first before I put the screw in. I think this will make my life a little bit easier. Hopefully my chameleon doesn't mind too much that I'm running a drill beside him. Alright, there it is, all hooked up. Drilling the small pilot hole was definitely the way to go. Wish I did that initially, but whatever. The whole process only took like about 10 or 15 minutes from struggle to finish. Sides all screwed back on. Yeah, no, it's pretty sturdy. Should work pretty good, I think. Okay, next step, gonna install the misting nozzle here. Looks pretty straightforward. Just had to, I guess cut a little hole in the screen, or just bore a little hole in the screen through, and then yeah, pretty easy. This part just pushes up through and then screws on top. Shouldn't be too bad. Alright, so I have the misting nozzle all hooked up through the screen, and then the starter kit just came with like a 90-degree elbow that I stick in there, just push it in straight, and then with the hose as well, just push it straight in. And now just working on getting the plumbing all the way down and through. Well, I'm definitely glad I test ran the bulkhead nozzle here for the reservoir. Definitely leaked a little bit when I first put some water in. They did give this like a little plug thing, which took me a while to figure out what that piece actually was for, but yeah, definitely a plug to help test out the system. Yeah, I had to kind of like jiggle the valve or the bulkhead around a little bit inside the hole just to try and I think get the pressure a little bit more even on the O-ring there. But yeah, you can't really crank on the nut too tightly because it starts to skip threads if you try to put more pressure on it. Like I said before, I think it would have been better if this would have been like a metal threaded piece that the nut could screw onto, so you could really get a nice little bit of fair amount of pressure on there to keep that O-ring nice and tight up against the side of the bucket. It was definitely leaking in between the O-ring and everything initially, but I don't know, it seems to be okay for now, but not totally sold that it's not going to leak at all in the future. I might put like a pan or something underneath the bucket just in case. Well, I was hoping for the best. Seems secure enough for now. I don't see any more leaking, so hopefully it's fine. Alright, so I have the hose connected up to the pump now. I just left the hose the original length as what it came in the box. You can see I just kind of ran it all the way to the top. I haven't really plumbed it all up nice or tied it all up nice yet. But yeah, I'll work on that later on. The only piece I did cut off was the piece that they said to cut from between the reservoir and the pump, they said did not make it much more than 1 to 2 feet in length for like priming purposes. They also mention a few times in the book to make sure that the pump is not elevated above the reservoir for priming purposes as well, which is pretty funny because I've watched a couple YouTube videos of a MistKing in action, and a couple of guys clearly had it wrong and didn't read the manual, which is pretty funny because they actually make a special point of making sure you read the manual even if you don't like reading manuals. So it's funny to see a couple of the other people's setups that actually didn't even bother to read the manual even after they warned them to. But anyways, we'll test run it now and see what happens. Well, I guess the pump is all plugged into the timer in the back there. I have the MistKing timer that came for the pump, and then my other timers for my lighting. There is like basically an on-off switch on the timer as well, as plus the 8 pre-programmed settings that you can do. I programmed mine to run twice a day, once in the morning and then once in the evening. Well, looks like it's working. I'll call it a success.